Life in the Navy is not something most people are used to. It's strange to think about spending days working on a base or on an aircraft carrier. If you're one of those people who think working all day on a carrier is a crazy concept, the carrier we're talking about today will be extremely hard to wrap your head around. Put into production nearly 20 years ago and christened a decade ago, the USS Gerald R. Ford is the largest aircraft carrier to date. It's no surprise that a workplace like the Gerald R. Ford wouldn't be comparable to a business office. The 100,000-ton carrier holds around 5,000 people, each with a different task and title. Life on a carrier can be difficult, but if you're up for the task, it's something that most people would love to get a chance to experience. Let's take a look at what it's like to spend life aboard the massive aircraft carrier that is the USS Gerald R. Ford. The gigantic carrier can be home to up to 75 different aircraft and houses over 5,000 people, just to give an example of how big it is. To house 5,000 people is a difficult task, and it's not all cheap. Some needs have to be met. Living so far away from home and from the people you know is not the easiest thing to do. It's a great change and adjustment that you've got to force yourself to get used to. Thankfully for the sailors aboard, there are installments to give them a taste of life back home. The ship has coffee shops, gyms, and areas designed for movies, video games, and simple lounging. While the main priority for everybody on board is the work at hand, there's still time for them to enjoy themselves on their time off. Of course, being a moving carrier in the water, oftentimes far out from land, you may not have access to certain materials or privileges that you need. For this reason, the sailors have learned to improvise. According to sailor Preston Moeller, routine things like toilet flushes and glasses of water are made fresh on the carrier using the water from the sea. Of course, not everything the sailors need can be made using seawater. There are some resources that the sailors have brought aboard whenever possible. These resources are transported by a process the sailors call underway replenishment. This is when a fleet of smaller ships, each filled with supplies, will come up next to the Gerald R. Ford. All ships involved will continue to stay in motion as a variety of cables, hoses, and assorted lines will connect one of the ships to the carrier. Once those lines, cables, and hoses are connected from one ship to the other, resources will steadily be sent along. Along with the needed supplies are some of the most necessary inclusions to the carrier's survival, things like fuel and ammunition. While the ammunition and the boxed supplies are a task to bring in, the fuel is even more of a job with a much higher risk factor. Not only will the carrier be stuck where it's at if the fuel isn't delivered properly, but the fuel itself is highly combustible, which makes things very dangerous. The transfer of the fuel is handled with extreme delicacy, and there are many safety measures to ensure that nothing goes astray. Safety is of great importance when it comes to a carrier of this size. There are many routines and protocols that each sailor and pilot needs to remember before they can go out into the action. On a flight deck, each person has a specific task, and you can tell what their task is by looking at the color of their shirt. Those who handle the aviation fuel wear purple. The salvage crew wears red. The aircraft handlers wear yellow, and the messengers wear blue. This takes away the stress of running around looking for a certain position. You can simply spot a color and find the exact crew member you're looking for. Even though each color has a specific task they're trained in, all of the different colors will come together when needed to make sure everything goes smoothly. All of the colored shirts have to wear the same mandatory PPE equipment while they're on the flight deck to ensure they're all at their peak performance. These include flight deck-specific pants and goggles, double hearing protection, safety boots, a jersey with long sleeves, gloves, a float coat, and a cranial. With the dangers at hand, it's no surprise that there is extensive training that needs to be done before one can get to work on the flight deck. It doesn't require just passing training courses. You must know everything there is to know about the flight deck, including knowing everything around you, what it's for, and what it does. Even once a member of the crew has done what's to be done and they've made their way onto the flight deck, they are still learning, practicing, and training every day. This ensures that they will not make any mistakes or find themselves in a dangerous situation. With such a huge career where everybody has a specific task, you can't always expect help to be given if you make a mistake. Everybody must hold their own to make sure that the crew is safe. Being on a carrier can have its great moments as you travel the world, but it's not always sunshine and rainbows. In fact, considering that the carrier is so frequently far out into the sea, it's the opposite. Weather is very unpredictable. Even when you think you know what to expect for the day, you can still be taken by surprise. The sea on an average day is crazy, and the wind out there is only a few steps behind you. Now imagine how hectic it could be in extreme weather conditions. Often it can rain heavily. In turn, a day of work on a flight deck where you're supposed to run back and forth and be 100% of your surroundings can be difficult. Even worse, typically with the rain, comes extreme wind. The wind can be so strong that sometimes even things like heavy aircraft struggle to stay in their designated place. The mandatory PPE prepares the crew for these weather conditions, but it can't prepare for everything alone. The crew must also consider the weather while doing their job. While being in the carrier means you've got a job to do, it isn't all work and no play. In its extreme size and with so many people aboard, the USS Gerald R. Ford is like a very small town. Crew members are required to work, but they do have their off days where they can lounge around. Fortunately for them, the Gerald R. Ford has many areas specifically designated for lounging on those days. We mentioned before the coffee spots and gymnasiums, but they are not the only things done to give thanks to the crew. There are spots where crew members can play video games and even stores for them to do their shopping. There are also places for them to watch movies and, more importantly to many crew members, watch football. The USS Gerald R. Ford is huge on the sport of football, with a cafeteria that is designed to thematically represent the Big Ten Conference. When the carrier is in motion, they will go so far as to bring out a screen in the hangar bay where the sailors can watch the NFL game that is playing at the time. Another way the crew members are compensated for the intense work they do every day is through top-notch food. On holidays, the crew is treated to a steak and lobster dinner. On weekends, they can look forward to lunch and dinner consisting of pasta, wings, and the fan favorite loved by everybody around the world, pizza. The kitchen of the carrier is called the galley. It's a very large room filled 24/7 with crew members dedicated to cooking, preparing, and serving meals. The galley is the workplace of over 100 sailors, each of whom has specialized training in the world of culinary arts. The galley functions as a sort of buffet for the sailors, allowing them to walk in and pick their choice of food. The galley also makes sure to consider the needs of all individuals, offering food that fits in with everybody's dieting and allergy requirements. The carrier is an extremely interesting but exciting place to call home. It's busy, with a great deal of tasks, each one more important than the last. There's so much at risk living in an environment like the one provided by the USS Gerald R. Ford. You're not just doing things that can affect you, you're doing things that can affect the lives of 5,000 other people. You must be specifically trained, educated, and prepared to take on a task like working on the ship. Of course, once you're ready and things are in motion, you do get to enjoy a little free time, good food, and close friends. And even though you can become close with those you work with, on a carrier of this size, you can still continue meeting new sailors every day throughout deployment. The Ford also has other rooms that you'd typically find upon a carrier, like a captain's cabin. There's also a medical unit in case any sailors get injured or sick during their deployment. The carrier is staffed with many different medical professionals who are equipped with the best up-to-date equipment to ensure the safety of those on board. 4 corpsmen make up the quick response team of the medical department. They are trained to respond to any medical emergency on board within the span of just 3 minutes. According to Kimberly Toon, the senior medical officer in 2016, the corpsmen on the carrier can do more than those ashore. This is due to the fact that they've got different equipment to work with, as there's more at risk with the patient on the carrier. If everything goes as planned and every sailor and crew member handles their task with the professionalism required of them, the USS Gerald R. Ford will run as it's intended to and offer an exciting, unique, and interesting opportunity to everybody on board. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Until next time.